My wife, Amanda, admitted that she's been seeing guys from a nightclub, and she says she wants to explore external relationships, and she didn't even flinch when she said it. I'm in shock. My name's Ethan, and I'm 35. I've been married to Amanda for 8 years now. We live in a modest two-bedroom house in a middle-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Cincinnati. I work as a project manager for a construction company. Steady job, decent pay. Life's been predictable, but comfortable. Amanda works as a nurse at the local urgent care. She's 31, bubbly, and the kind of person who can strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere. It's one of the things I used to admire most about her. Our life together was stable, I guess you could say. We were your typical working-class couple. No kids yet. We'd talked about it, but always agreed we'd wait until we were more settled. Evenings were spent catching up on TV shows or occasionally going out for dinner. Weekends were a mix of home projects, errands, and maybe seeing some friends. It was all comfortable, predictable, and for a long time I thought that was enough. But things started shifting in the last few months, though I didn't really notice at first. Amanda started going out more, always with her friend Kelsey. They'd hit up new spots around the city. Bars, clubs, even an occasional karaoke night. I never minded. I thought Amanda needed a break from the grind of work, something to recharge her energy. I'd even encouraged her to go out, thinking it'd help her unwind. Kelsey, her partner in crime, had gone through a nasty divorce recently. She was 2 years older than Amanda and had a habit of pulling her into whatever she was up to. Amanda assured me it was harmless fun, just a couple of girls letting loose. I believed her. I trusted her. But now, sitting here recounting this, I realize how blind I've been. Last Friday, I'd made plans for Amanda and me to have a nice night out. We hadn't spent much time together recently, not like we used to. I figured a night out at one of our favorite restaurants might help us reconnect. I made reservations at a place called La Bellevue, an upscale spot we'd been going to since we first started dating. The food's great, and it's got a cozy, intimate atmosphere, pristine white tablecloths, dim lighting, the whole deal. I wanted it to be special. I'd even gone a step further and bought her a necklace I'd seen her eyeing a few months back. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was a nice piece, delicate silver with a small diamond pendant. I thought she'd appreciate it. I thought it might remind her of the good times we used to have before all these nights out with Kelsey and whatever else was going on. We arrived at the restaurant around 7. I'd reserved a corner table, away from the crowds, hoping for some privacy. We sat down, ordered drinks. She got a glass of white wine. I went with my usual bourbon, but something fell off from the start. Amanda was distracted. Her phone kept lighting up on the table, and she'd glance at it, her fingers twitching like she wanted to pick it up, but she didn't. Instead, she kept scanning the room, her eyes darting around like she was expecting someone. I tried to brush it off, telling myself she was just tired from work. But the silence between us was thick, the kind that weighed heavier with each passing minute. "So, how's work been?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Busy," she said flatly, not even looking up from her wine. "Same old." We ate in near silence. I asked about her week, tried making small talk about a new show I thought she'd like, but she gave me short, uninterested replies. Every now and then, her eyes would flick to the door or scan the restaurant, as if she were waiting for someone more interesting to walk in. Usually her attention would be on me, especially on nights like this. Tonight, it was as if she wasn't even there. Halfway through dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. "Amanda, is everything okay?" She finally looked up, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "You've been distant. Lately. Not just tonight. I feel like something's going on, and I don't know what it is." She sighed, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of a decision already made. Her fingers toyed with her wine glass, and for a second, I thought she was going to brush it off, tell me I was imagining things. But instead, she surprised me. "We need to talk," she said quietly, looking down at her plate. That's when I knew it was serious. Amanda never said "we need to talk," unless something big was coming. "About what?" I leaned forward, my stomach nodding. She hesitated, then placed her phone face down on the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Ethan. About us. About what I need." My mind raced. Was she going to suggest a separation? A divorce? I hadn't seen this coming. Not like this. I feel stifled. Like I'm losing myself, she said, still avoiding eye contact. I love you, but I need to explore who I am outside of this relationship. I froze. What are you talking about? She took a deep breath, her eyes finally meeting mine. I need to see other people, Ethan. I need to experience more. I want to explore relationships outside of our marriage. I think it'll help me figure things out. Help me be a better partner in the long run. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my throat. Explore other relationships? I repeated, my voice louder than I intended. You're saying you want to cheat on me? It's not cheating if we agree on it, she said, her voice unnervingly calm. I'm not leaving you. I just need this time to explore, and I hope you can understand that. I sat there, stunned. I couldn't even process it. This was Amanda, my wife, the woman I thought I knew inside and out. And she was sitting here, casually telling me she wanted to be with other men, like it was the most natural thing in the world. You can't be serious, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We're married, Amanda. We made vows. You can't just... I know, she interrupted. I'm not saying it's easy, but I've thought about this for a long time. I need something more. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it, but all I could think was, how did we get here? How did I not see this coming? Then she said something that cut even deeper. It's not just an idea, Ethan. I've already started. Started what? My heart pounded in my chest. There's someone, she said quietly, at the club. His name's Liam. It's nothing serious, but I've been seeing him. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. You've been seeing someone? I whispered. From a club? How long has this been going on? Only a few weeks, she said quickly, as if that made it better. It's not about him, it's about me. I'm trying to figure out what I want. I stared at her, my world collapsing around me. And the worst part? She wasn't even ashamed of it. We finished the rest of the meal in silence. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond. After dinner, I drove home in a daze, barely hearing her as she told me she was heading out with Kelsey for the night. Some part of me wanted to stop her, to make her stay, to talk things through. But the other part, the part that was already broken, it didn't have the energy to fight. That night, Amanda got a text from Liam, the bartender. She smiled as she read it, her excitement palpable, even as I sat next to her on the couch. And I realized, in that moment, that something had shifted between us, something that might never be the same again. I threw myself into work the next week. It seemed like the only way to keep my mind off the fact that Amanda, my wife of 8 years, was casually seeing other men. The idea of her with someone like Liam, a bartender she met at a club, gnawed at me constantly. I didn't know how to handle it. At the office, I buried myself in projects, stayed late to avoid coming home to that heavy silence, to the tension that now filled our house. Every night, Amanda would go out, usually with Kelsey. Sometimes she'd be gone for hours, not getting home until well after midnight. I didn't ask where she went, and she didn't offer any explanations. Maybe she assumed I didn't want to know, or maybe she just didn't care to tell me anymore. Either way, we barely talked, the distance between us growing wider with each passing day. I could feel it, something in her was slipping away, and I had no idea how to pull it back. It was a Thursday night when things took a sharp turn. I just got home from a 12-hour day on site. The place was empty. As usual, Amanda nowhere to be found. I made myself a quick dinner, something out of a can, and crashed on the couch. The silence in the house felt louder than the sound of the TV. I remember thinking back to when our evenings used to be filled with laughter, when Amanda would tell me about her day, and we'd talk about plans for the future. That all felt like a lifetime ago. I wasn't surprised when Amanda didn't come home until after midnight. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard the front door creak open. She came in quietly, probably hoping I'd already be asleep, but I sat up as soon as I heard her footsteps. "Hey," I said, my voice hoarse from the long day. She paused in the doorway, surprised to see me still awake. "Hey," she replied, sounding distracted, her fingers clutching her phone tightly. She was still in the same black dress she'd left the house in, her hair a little tousled, a faint scent of perfume, and something else, something I didn't want to think about. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my tone betrayed me. It came out more like an accusation than a question. Kelsey and I went to the Velvet Room, she said, referring to the nightclub downtown they'd been frequenting. Just had a few drinks, hung out. Nothing major. I didn't say anything for a minute, just stared at her. I wanted to ask her what exactly she'd done there, if Liam had been there, if they'd... But I stopped myself. Maybe I didn't want to know the details. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. Instead, I nodded and stood up. I'm going to bed, I said, walking past her without another word. She didn't stop me. She didn't say anything at all. The next morning, I left for work early, before Amanda was even awake. I needed space, time to think. It was a Friday, and I figured if I stayed busy enough, I could avoid dealing with everything swirling in my head. But by the time lunch rolled around, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I shot her a quick text, telling her we needed to talk when I got home. She didn't reply, which wasn't surprising. Amanda had been keeping her distance lately, physically and emotionally. When I finally walked through the door that evening, she was waiting for me. She sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, looking as calm as ever. But there was something in the air between us, thick and heavy, a conversation waiting to happen. Hey, she greeted me casually, like nothing was wrong. Hey, I replied, setting my keys down on the counter. We need to talk. She sighed, already knowing what was coming. I know. I sat down across from her, my stomach twisted in knots. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted some kind of explanation. Anything that would make sense of the chaos she'd unleashed on our marriage. Amanda, I began, my voice measured but strained. You've been going out almost every night. You've been seeing other people. I get that this is what you think you need, but I don't understand why. What happened? When did we stop being enough? She didn't meet my eyes at first. Instead, she fidgeted with her phone, twisting it between her hands. It's not that you're not enough, Ethan. This isn't about you. It's about me. I feel lost. Like there's this part of me I've never really explored. And I need to. If I don't, I'm going to regret it. I stared at her, dumbfounded. You need to explore what, exactly? She took a deep breath, finally looking up at me. Other relationships. I want to know what's out there, Ethan. I want to experience things outside of us. I felt a familiar sting in my chest. The same one I'd felt at the restaurant when she first brought this up. You're talking about sleeping with other people, I said, my voice harder than I intended. Not just that, she insisted. It's about more than sex. It's about connections, about finding out who I am outside of being your wife. I love you, Ethan. I do. But I'm not sure I can keep pretending that I'm okay with how things are. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought back to all the years we'd spent together, the life we'd built. And now, here she was telling me that wasn't enough for her anymore. That I wasn't enough. And what about Kelsey? I asked, my voice cold. Is she the one pushing this? She went through her divorce, and now she's encouraging you to do this. Amanda hesitated, just for a second. Kelsey, she's been through a lot. She's helped me see that I need to take control of my life. I clenched my fists under the table. So what? Now you're going to throw our marriage away because Kelsey says you need to find yourself. It's not about Kelsey, Amanda snapped, frustration flashing across her face. It's about me. It's about what I need. And what about what I need? I shot back. What about us? We'll still be us, she said, her voice softening, but I could hear the doubt in her tone. I need time to figure things out. I stood up, pushing the chair back a little too forcefully. Figure things out? I echoed, my voice rising. You've already figured things out, Amanda. You're screwing some guy from a club, and now you want me to just sit around and wait for you to come back when you're done exploring. She flinched at my words, but didn't deny them. Instead, she said quietly, it's not like that. Then what is it like? I demanded. She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. I'm not leaving you, Ethan. I'm just asking for space. I want to know what's out there, and I need you to understand that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And what if I don't understand, Amanda? What if I can't accept this? Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her resolve. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm hoping you can. That night, Amanda went out with Kelsey again, leaving me alone in the house. I didn't even know where she was going. The Velvet Room again, probably. It didn't matter. Nothing made sense anymore. All I could think about was how everything had spiraled so quickly. One moment, we were a normal couple, planning for the future, talking about maybe starting a family one day. Now, she was out with some guys she barely knew, and I was left wondering if our marriage could survive this. The next morning, Amanda came back as if nothing had changed. She was hungover, bleary-eyed, but cheerful in a way that cut deep. She made coffee, sat at the kitchen island like it was a normal Saturday, and looked at me with that same unnerving calm. "Are we going to be okay, Ethan?" she asked, as if she hadn't completely upended our life. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I don't know if we will be." She nodded like she expected that answer. Then her phone buzzed again, and her face lit up as she glanced at the screen. I didn't need to ask who it was. Liam. The days passed in a blur after that conversation with Amanda. I didn't bring it up again, and neither did she. Instead, I kept myself busy at work, pushing through one project after another, avoiding home as much as possible. It was easier that way, avoiding the uncomfortable silences, the unspoken tension that lingered in every room of our house. My office became my sanctuary. The concrete floors, the sound of power tools, and the constant buzz of people moving around. It was all a welcome distraction from the mess my life had become. Most of my co-workers hadn't noticed anything off, except for Sarah. Sarah worked in project planning, a few desks over from mine. She wasn't nosy, but she was perceptive. I could tell she had been watching me closely over the past few weeks, picking up on the fact that I'd been showing up earlier, leaving later, and barely talking to anyone. She finally caught me during a coffee break. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, leaning against the counter in the break room. I forced a smile, though I knew it didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, just been busy. A lot going on." She nodded but didn't buy it. "Is it work or something else?" I hesitated for a second. Sarah and I had always had an easy working relationship, but I wasn't sure how much I wanted to share with her. It felt strange bringing personal problems into the workplace. But at that moment, I needed someone to talk to. "A bit of both," I admitted, pouring sugar into my coffee, even though I normally drank it black. "More on the personal side, actually." She tilted her head, her brown eyes narrowing in concern. "I'm a good listener if you need to talk." I glanced around the empty break room, feeling the weight of the silence between us. Something about her calm presence made me feel like I could open up, if only a little. "It's Amanda," I finally said, leaning against the counter. Things haven't been great between us lately." Sarah didn't say anything at first. She just waited, letting me find the words. So I told her about the distance, about Amanda going out every night, and about the exploring she'd mentioned. I didn't go into details about Liam or the fact that Amanda was seeing someone else. I wasn't ready to say that out loud yet. "That sounds tough," Sarah said softly, her face filled with genuine sympathy. "It must be hard to feel like you're being left out of your own marriage." I nodded, surprised by how accurate her words were. That was exactly how it felt, like I was watching my marriage slip through my fingers, powerless to stop it. "You don't deserve that," she added after a pause. "No one does." I didn't know what to say, so I just shrugged and took a sip of my coffee. But I could tell that something had shifted between Sarah and me in that moment. It wasn't just a casual workplace conversation anymore. It was the beginning of something deeper. Meanwhile, Amanda's late nights continued. I barely saw her, and when I did, it was like talking to a stranger. She was distant, always on her phone or getting ready to head out with Kelsey. I knew she was still seeing Liam, though she never mentioned him by name. It didn't take much to figure it out. Her long stints at the Velvet Room and the way she would dress up just to go for drinks made it painfully obvious. But things between her and Liam weren't as perfect as she'd probably imagined. I overheard bits and pieces when she talked to Kelsey on the phone late at night, their voices drifting down the hall while I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Apparently, Liam wasn't as committed to whatever fling they had going on as she'd hoped. He'd started pulling away, disappearing for days at a time, not returning her texts as quickly, and making excuses about being busy when she asked to meet up. The tables had turned, and suddenly, Amanda wasn't the one in control. That's when I noticed Amanda beginning to unravel, her confidence shaken. I could feel the shift in her, too. It was subtle at first. She started staying home more often, texting less, pacing around the house like she was waiting for something. She'd sit in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her eyes darting to the screen, waiting for Liam to respond, but he rarely did. The moment everything truly came crashing down happened on a Saturday afternoon. I'd taken the day off work, hoping to catch up on some things around the house, maybe clear my head. I decided to stop by a coffee shop down the street for a break, somewhere quiet where I could just sit for a while. As I walked in, I froze. Sitting in the corner of the cafe, laughing, was Amanda and Liam. I couldn't mistake him. He was a tall guy, dark hair, rugged look, wearing the same smirk I'd seen her talk about. They were sitting close, too close, heads bent together like they were sharing some private joke. My chest tightened, anger bubbling up inside me. I stood there for a second, my mind spinning, before I forced myself to walk over to them. "Amanda," I said, my voice cold. She jumped, her eyes widening as she looked up at me. "Ethan," she stammered. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, staring at her, and then glancing at Liam, who was now leaning back in his seat, watching the interaction with a lazy grin. "That's my question." Liam didn't say anything. He just raised an eyebrow, like he was daring me to make a scene. Amanda quickly stood up, grabbing her purse. "I was just having coffee with a friend," she said hurriedly, her voice tight. "Coffee with a friend?" I echoed, feeling the heat rise in my face. "This is what you meant by exploring relationships, right?" "This guy?" Liam finally spoke up, his voice smooth. "Hey man, relax. We're just talking." I turned to him, my fists clenched at my sides. "Shut up," I snapped, not bothering to hide my anger anymore. "This isn't about you." Amanda stepped in between us, her voice panicked. "Ethan, stop. Don't make this worse than it is." "Worse than it is?" I laughed bitterly. "You're sitting here with him like this is normal. You said you needed space, Amanda, but you didn't say it was to go screw around behind my back." "It's not like that," she insisted, her eyes darting between me and Liam. "We're just talking." "I'm done talking," I muttered, backing away from them. "Enjoy your coffee." I turned on my heel and stormed out of the cafe, my mind spinning, my heart pounding. It was real. This wasn't just in my head anymore. Amanda had made her choice, and it wasn't me. When I got home, I didn't even bother waiting for Amanda to come back. I packed an overnight bag, threw in some essentials, and headed out. I needed space, real space, not the kind Amanda had been talking about. I checked into a hotel for the night, lying on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had just happened. I could still see the image of Amanda and Liam together in the cafe, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. The way she'd looked at him, the way she tried to downplay everything. It was like a knife twisting in my gut. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I realized I wasn't going to win her back. Whatever Amanda was looking for, it wasn't me. Maybe it never had been. By the time I got home the next day, I was more resolved than ever. Staying in that hotel overnight gave me clarity I didn't expect. This situation with Amanda wasn't something I could live with. I knew that much. The only question left was what I was going to do about it. As soon as I walked through the door, I saw her. Amanda was sitting on the couch, her phone resting on her lap. She looked up, probably surprised I was home so early. The usual tension hung in the air between us, thick enough to choke on. But this time, I wasn't going to avoid it. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. There was no avoiding it anymore. No more skating around the mess we were in. Amanda set her phone down, folding her arms across her chest. "About what?" I stepped into the living room, standing just a few feet from her. "About Liam. About what the hell is going on between us. You need to make a decision, Amanda. I'm done pretending this is something we can just brush under the rug." She sighed, leaning back into the cushions. "Ethan, I've already told you. I need space. I need to figure things out for myself." "That's not an answer," I shot back. "You're figuring things out while seeing another man. I saw you with him at that cafe, laughing like it was nothing. Like I'm just an afterthought. I can't live like this anymore." Her eyes flashed with frustration. "What do you want me to say? It's not about him. It's about me. I told you this already. You want me to just sit here while you go off and explore yourself?" I pressed. "I'm giving you an ultimatum, Amanda. Either you stop this, stop seeing him, stop whatever it is you're doing, and commit to working on our marriage, or you move out." She stared at me, the room going silent. I could tell by the look in her eyes that she hadn't expected this. She thought she could keep stringing me along, buying herself more time. But I wasn't going to let her have it anymore. Move out? She repeated, disbelief creeping into her voice. You can't be serious. I'm serious, I said, my voice calm but firm. You can't have it both ways. You can't live here with me and then go out and sleep with him or anyone else. It's either our marriage or it's this freedom you're so obsessed with. But you can't have both. She stood up, pacing across the room, clearly rattled. Ethan, you don't understand. I'm not trying to hurt you. I can't go back to feeling trapped. I need to figure out who I am. You're hurting me every single day, I said, my tone sharper than I meant it to be. Every time you walk out that door to see him, you're hurting me. You might think this is about finding yourself, but all I see is someone who doesn't care about our marriage anymore. I do care, she insisted, turning to face me. But I'm not going to lie to you. I need this time. I need to know what else is out there before I can fully commit to us. I stared at her, stunned by how easily she said it. How casually she dismissed everything we'd built together, as if it were some temporary arrangement she could step away from and return to whenever she felt like it. And what about Liam? I asked, forcing the words out through clenched teeth. Is he just part of your exploration too? Because it seems to me like he's more than that. She didn't answer right away, her gaze dropping to the floor. It's not serious with him, she said after a long pause. I told you, this isn't about him. That's not the point, Amanda, I said, my frustration mounting. It doesn't matter if it's serious or not. You're still cheating on me. And if it's not Liam, who else is it? Are there others? Her hesitation was all the answer I needed. You're kidding me, I muttered, feeling a surge of anger rise in my chest. There are others, aren't there? She stayed silent, her arms still crossed, refusing to meet my eyes. That was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. I didn't need to hear another word. I wasn't going to let myself be dragged through this mess any longer. I'm done, I said, my voice low. I can't do this anymore, Amanda. If you're not going to stop, then you need to pack your things and leave. She looked up at me, finally meeting my gaze, her face pale. Ethan, don't do this. You've already made your choice, I said, shaking my head. Now I'm making mine. I left the house, needing air, space, anything to clear my head. My mind was spinning as I drove aimlessly around town, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. Amanda wasn't just seeing Liam. She was talking to other men too. God knows what else she was up to. I couldn't believe how far things had gone. It wasn't long before I found myself at the office, parking in the empty lot. I didn't have anywhere else to go, and something about the quiet, sterile atmosphere of the building felt like the only place where I could think. I headed straight for my desk, not bothering to check if anyone else was around. It was after hours, and most people had gone home. But I wasn't alone. Sarah was still there, sitting at her desk, working late as usual. She looked up when she saw me, surprise flashing across her face. Ethan, what are you doing here? I thought you'd left for the day. I sat down heavily at my desk, running a hand through my hair. It's a long story. She frowned, standing up and walking over to my side of the room. What's going on? I sighed, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I just gave Amanda an ultimatum. I told her she either ends things with this guy she's seeing, or she moves out. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. Wow, that's a big step. I didn't have a choice, I said, leaning back in my chair. She's not just seeing one guy. I found out there are others. She's been talking to people online, going out, doing God knows what. And I've been sitting around like an idiot, waiting for her to figure things out. Sarah nodded, her expression sympathetic. I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I stared at my desk, feeling a strange sense of numbness wash over me. It's my own fault, really. I let it go on for too long. I kept hoping she'd come to her senses, that we could fix things. But it's pretty clear now that's not going to happen. Sarah hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Have you thought about talking to a lawyer? I know it's a big step, but it might be time to consider it. Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water. A lawyer. Divorce. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but now, after everything that had happened, it seemed like the only option left. I've been thinking about it, I admitted quietly. I don't know what else to do. Sarah didn't say anything for a moment. She just sat down beside me, her presence comforting in a way I hadn't expected. If you ever need to talk, or if you need help figuring anything out, I'm here, she said softly. You don't have to go through this alone. I nodded, grateful for her support. There was something about Sarah that made me feel like I wasn't drowning in this situation. Like maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the mess my life had become. By the time I got home that night, Amanda was still there, but she didn't say a word to me. She was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV, her bags packed by the front door. She'd made her decision. After Amanda packed her bags and left, it didn't take long for the house to feel like a stranger's home. Every room was a reminder of the life we once shared, and yet it felt hollow, empty. I moved into the guest room, figuring it would be temporary until the divorce finalized, if it came to that. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our old bedroom, not with all the memories lingering there like ghosts. The next few days were a blur. I called the divorce attorney, the same one Sarah had suggested. We went over the basics, outlined what the process would look like, what I needed to gather in terms of documents and assets. The attorney's office had that cold, clinical feel, all business, no emotion. I knew it was the right move, but it didn't make it any easier. Signing those initial papers felt like putting the first nail in the coffin. Meanwhile, Amanda was out there still exploring. I didn't know the details, and I didn't ask, but it was clear that things weren't as glamorous as she thought they would be. Kelsey was still dragging her to clubs, still pushing her to live that wild, carefree life. And Liam? Well, it seemed like he was already starting to pull away. Amanda didn't talk to me directly anymore, but I heard through mutual friends that he'd started ghosting her, and she wasn't handling it well. Apparently, the excitement she had been chasing was turning out to be more complicated than she expected. One evening after work, I found myself lingering in the office later than usual again. Sarah was still there, too, working through some last-minute reports. We'd grown closer over the past few weeks, mostly talking about work, but sometimes veering into more personal territory. She had been a rock for me, something stable to hold on to in the middle of all this chaos. Hey, she called from across the office. You heading out soon? I shrugged, leaning back in my chair. No rush. Nowhere to be. She walked over, sitting on the edge of my desk. How are things going with, everything? About as well as you'd expect, I replied. I've started the process with the lawyer, so it's moving forward. But it's weird. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Sarah nodded, her expression soft. I get it. I went through something similar with my ex. It feels surreal at first, but it gets easier. Eventually. I looked up at her surprised. She'd never mentioned much about her past relationships. You were married? Yeah, she said with a small smile. It was a long time ago, though. We split up when we realized we wanted different things. No cheating or anything like that, but it was still rough. It took me a while to figure out who I was after it ended. Hearing that from her, someone who always seemed so composed, made me feel a little less alone in all this. I had no idea, I said quietly. I guess I've been so wrapped up in my own mess that I never thought to ask about yours. She waved it off. It's ancient history. But I know what you're going through, Ethan. And for what it's worth, you're handling it better than most people would. I don't feel like I am, I admitted. Most days I just feel lost. Sarah leaned forward, her hand resting on my arm. You're not lost. You're just in the middle of something really hard. But you'll come out the other side of it, I promise. For a moment, the air between us felt different. Heavier, more charged. Her hand lingered on my arm, and I could feel the warmth of her touch through the fabric of my shirt. I looked up at her, meeting her eyes, and for the first time, I noticed something more there. Something deeper than just friendship. Before I realized what was happening, we were leaning in closer. Her breath was soft against my face. And then, without thinking, our lips met in a slow, hesitant kiss. It was brief, just a moment. But as soon as it happened, I pulled back, my heart racing. I'm sorry, I stammered, running a hand through my hair. I shouldn't have. Ethan, it's okay, Sarah said quickly, her voice gentle. You don't need to apologize. But I did. As much as I felt something for her, as much as I wanted to forget everything and lose myself in that kiss, it didn't feel right. Not yet. My marriage was falling apart, but it wasn't over. I was still tangled up in the mess of Amanda, and I couldn't move on. Not yet. I'm not ready, I said quietly, avoiding her eyes. She smiled softly, understanding. I get it. Take your time. A few days later, things took a turn I didn't expect. Amanda, who had been spiraling deeper into her self-destructive path, found out about Sarah. I don't know how, maybe it was through a mutual friend, or maybe she just sensed it, but the next thing I knew, she was blowing up my phone. Who the hell is Sarah? Her text read, followed by a string of messages demanding answers. I didn't respond at first, mostly because I didn't owe her any explanations. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. But later that evening, when she showed up at the house, it became clear she wasn't going to let it go. She banged on the door until I finally opened it, her face red with anger. Are you serious, Ethan? You're already seeing someone else. I crossed my arms, trying to stay calm. I'm not seeing anyone, Amanda. Sarah is just a friend. But why does it matter to you? You're the one who wanted space, who wanted to explore other relationships. What I do now is my business. That's different, she snapped. You're still my husband. You can't just... No. I cut her off, my voice cold. You made it clear that you didn't want to be my wife anymore. You wanted your freedom, and you got it. But you don't get to come in here and accuse me of moving on when you've been seeing other men for months. Her face fell, her anger fading into something closer to desperation. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought I could figure things out, but I feel like everything's falling apart. I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. That's because it is, Amanda. This whole thing, Liam, your exploration, it's not working out the way you thought it would. And now you're realizing what you threw away. She stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice firm. And now you need to figure out where you go from here. Because this can't keep happening. Amanda left that night, more confused than angry. It was the first time she seemed genuinely unsure of herself, as if the walls she had built around her freedom were starting to crack. Liam had already drifted away, and Kelsey's influence was leading her down darker paths, clubs, reckless behavior, things that she couldn't control anymore. The next few days after Amanda's meltdown passed in relative calm, at least for me, Amanda had gone quiet again, which I was starting to get used to. She had a pattern, stirring up chaos, then disappearing into the aftermath. And after our last conversation, it felt like we'd reached a sort of stalemate. I hadn't seen Sarah much since that kiss, though we still talked at work. Things were back to being professional, but there was an undercurrent now, a shift in how we looked at each other, how we spoke. Nothing had happened between us since that moment, but I knew it wasn't just over. I was trying to be careful. After all, I was still technically married, and I wasn't about to jump from one wreck into another. I needed time to process everything. But of course, Amanda didn't let things settle for long. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was heading home after another late night at the office. I was thinking about dinner when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, but I immediately knew who it was. Amanda, we need to talk. Now, the text read, followed by an address I didn't recognize. I sighed, pulling over to the side of the road and checking the location. It wasn't too far, and curiosity got the better of me. When I pulled up to the address, my stomach dropped. It was Sarah's place. I parked, feeling a knot of tension twist in my chest. I had no idea what I was walking into, but whatever this was, it wasn't going to be good. I approached the door cautiously, and before I could knock, I heard voices, raised, angry voices. One of them was Amanda's, and the other was unmistakably Sarah's. Amanda, you're out of line. Sarah's voice was calm, but firm, cutting through the tension. You think you could just steal my husband? Amanda shot back, her voice cracking with emotion. I didn't wait any longer. I pushed open the door, stepping inside to see them standing in the middle of Sarah's living room. Amanda's face was flushed with anger, her eyes wild, while Sarah stood there, arms crossed, looking both frustrated and composed. Ethan, Amanda turned to me, her eyes blazing. Did you know? Did you know she's been trying to come between us this whole time? I stepped further into the room, keeping my voice steady. Amanda, What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, she snapped, pointing at Sarah. She's been waiting for us to fall apart so she can swoop in and take you. She's been manipulating you, I know it. I glanced at Sarah, who shook her head slowly, exasperated but calm. Amanda, this isn't about Sarah, I said, trying to rein in the growing frustration inside me. This is about you. This is about the choices you've been making. You can't keep blaming other people for the situation you put us in. Her face crumpled, the anger giving way to something else, desperation. Ethan, I know I've made mistakes, but this isn't fair. You don't just get to leave me for someone else. I'm not leaving you for anyone, I said, my voice growing more forceful. I'm leaving you because you left this marriage a long time ago. You wanted freedom, you wanted to explore, and I gave you space to do that. But I can't keep doing this, Amanda. It's over. Her breath hitched, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. You can't mean that. I do, I said, feeling the finality of my words sink in. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The divorce papers are being drafted. The room went silent. For a moment, Amanda just stood there, staring at me like she didn't recognize me. Then, all at once, the fight seemed to drain out of her. Ethan, please, she whispered. Don't do this. I shook my head, feeling the weight of everything settling onto my shoulders. You made your choice, Amanda. This is the consequence. After Amanda left Sarah's house, the silence between me and Sarah was thick. She walked over to the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water, and I leaned against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. You okay? She asked softly, glancing at me. I nodded, though I wasn't sure how I felt. Yeah, I think so. Sarah sipped her water, her eyes on me. You didn't have to tell her here. You could have waited. I shrugged. It was bound to happen eventually. She would have found out one way or another. There was a long pause before Sarah spoke again. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Ethan. You didn't, I said quickly, pushing off the wall and walking toward her. Amanda, she's been spiraling for a while. This wasn't about you. But Sarah didn't look convinced. Still, I don't want to be the reason things get worse for you. I met her eyes, and for a second I didn't know what to say. I wanted to reassure her, tell her that she wasn't to blame, that everything was already falling apart before she was ever involved. But I also knew I needed to keep my distance, at least for now. Things between me and Amanda weren't over yet. Not officially. Let's not complicate this any more than it already is, I said finally, my voice low. We'll figure things out after. She nodded, understanding, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. A quiet sadness. It wasn't long after that night that the final twist dropped. I got a call from Amanda, her voice shaking with something between panic and fear. I need to talk to you, she said quickly, barely giving me time to respond. It's important. I didn't know what to expect when I met her, but whatever it was, I wasn't prepared for what she said next. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My mind blanked for a moment as I tried to make sense of what she had just told me. With Liam's baby, she added, her voice breaking. He doesn't want anything to do with it. I stared at her, the full weight of her situation crashing down around us. She had destroyed our marriage chasing after this guy, and now he was abandoning her. And she was pregnant, left holding the pieces of a life that had spun completely out of control. I didn't know what to say. What was there to say? As the days passed, Amanda's world unraveled further. Kelsey distanced herself, probably sensing that Amanda's chaos was becoming too much to handle. Liam was gone, having made it clear he didn't want to be involved in her life or the babies. And Amanda was left completely alone, grappling with the consequences of everything she had done. I, on the other hand, was moving forward. Cautiously, yes, but I was moving. Sarah and I took things slow, careful not to rush into anything while I was still finalizing the divorce. But there was something real between us, something that had grown from friendship and understanding into something deeper. We didn't label it, not yet. There was too much still hanging in the air, too much left to be resolved. But we were finding our way. As for Amanda, I didn't know what her future held. I couldn't save her from the choices she had made. She had burned too many bridges, and now she was left standing in the wreckage. Alone. And in the end, As I stood there looking at what was left of my old life, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I had lost something, yes, but I had also found clarity. I had found myself again. Thank you for listening to this story. Subscribe to the channel, put a like under the video, and write a comment about how you like this story.